Well, welcome to a quick little FRQ review session I'd like to have with you. First of all, I just want to let you know that I can't tell you how much I miss seeing your faces in person. And trying to cry. I've been kind of avoiding this. Would give myself a week to get it all together. But this is really hard for y'all, and I know it's so hard for our seniors, and I feel so bad for y'all. But just know I miss you, and I'm here for you, and I'm a remind text away or email away anytime y'all need me for anything. So we're gonna do this, and we're gonna make the best of it in our new normal, and we're gonna kill it, and y'all are gonna still show up on our new exam date, and we're gonna prepare you to the best that we possibly can. And just want you to know that Mr. Thornton and I are in constant communication. I'm in constant communication with my nerd Facebook group. I'll even show you a little blurb from that here in a second. So all that aside, just know that I love y'all, and I wish this weren't the way we're doing things, but it is, and we're gonna adjust. So let's go ahead and start. I sent this picture out to y'all last week via Remind, but I wanted to go ahead and make sure y'all know, May 18th, new exam, 4 p.m. sharp. You may use a tablet, phone, or laptop. I suggest a laptop because you could type faster. And so you will have two different prompts. Okay, so if you look over here, you have a design and investigation. And this one is 60% of your exam grade. You'll have 25 minutes to actually type it out, and then you have 5 minutes to submit it. So it's not two at a time and then boom. You have to one prompt, submit it, second prompt, submit it. Okay, and so what we're going to try to do here from here on out is that we've got to focus on the content with you. Okay, so we're going back units 1 through 7. Last week was 1 and 2. And we're basically focusing on content so that you can turn around and you have to be able to make connections. So you're only going to have 2, which means they're going to cram a lot of content into those 2 different questions. How can you pull from all the different things we have learned all year long? And it's easy to panic and say, wait a minute, they're asking me this about this, but how do they? And I'm going to use the first FRQ you did last week as an example to show you how you can make these connections. But this is the new normal. What I want you to go ahead and practice right now, I want you to get your textbook. I pray that it's at home with you and not in your locker. That way, I want you to become more familiar with your textbook. What I need you to do, the index, okay? So the more you're timed, but you can use anything, okay? You can't use chat. We feel like there's going to be some kind of video for them to, we don't know yet. I don't know all the details. But anyway, the more familiar you are, the less you have to look stuff up. But if you have to look something up, you got to do it fast, okay? So the fact that it's open book can shoot you in the foot if you're not careful. And traditionally, we all know this. Open note tests, open book tests take you longer to complete because the tendency is you want to go and look every single thing up. The more prepared you are on the front end, the less time you need to look said things up, okay? So let's get started here. So just as a quick little review, I do want to show you my nerd page. I always talk about how I have this Facebook page of teacher nerds that I go to and hang out with. This is something we are trying really hard to analyze everything the College Board is telling us. By the way, there's a webinar coming up in a couple of days. I'll send you a reminder. It's a good idea for you and your parents to watch it. But even here, we're trying to figure out this math or no math. Like, is there going to be math? Do you need a calculator? No calculator. So really, in the end, it says you'll interpret quantitative data or charts, but won't need calculators to do the math calculations. So my guess on that is that you'll have to do something like predictive, like look at a graph and then just determine, like we had one recently with BP oil spill, I believe. You had to figure out plus or minus a certain amount of data. They'll give you like a plus or minus 2 to 5, depending on how hard it is to read a graph. But reading graphs and interpreting data, maybe a percent change, old minus new, absolute value divided by old. That's something that you can usually do pretty quickly. But real quick, let's go, since we're kind of talking about FRQs and it's all FRQ now, let's make sure we've got this. So the things that I see most often that you need to change your verbiage on is making sure that you don't say something very vague like, so this would be bad for the environment, or this pollution is bad for the environment. What pollution? You've got to be specific. How is it bad for the environment? You can't just say that. You can't say pollution bad for environment. You got to tell me how. Okay, and so you're probably thinking, why she's talking about pollution? It's not on the test. Air pollution, yes, air pollution is unit 7. So we don't have solid waste water, which was unit 8, and we don't have global change, which is unit 9. However, the biodiversity part you probably will see again, because you saw in your review last week that it is also a part of ecology. So we do think we'll have some of the biodiversity stuff, invasive species. But y'all remember that was a review anyway. You already knew most of that, invasive species, endangered species. So look over here at these words that I'm trying to get you to not say. Human impact, human footprint, harm the environment. Oh, make it illegal. You can't tell me as like what something government can do, make it illegal. How? You have to talk about a specific law that they would use in order to make it illegal or to assign a permit. So things to think about when you're in your writing. If a fourth grader could say it, it's too vague. Be careful with absolutes. It's not going to kill everything per se. And then will the entire ecosystem really be harmed? So that's just a little too absolute. Just remember, you're trying to be specific as possible. If it asks for anything besides identify, you need at least 2 sentences. You're going to do your claim, period, and then explain it, period. And often, if you can keep going with the more reasoning, keep going, okay? The more you put, the better. And now identify, sometimes identify is more than just a word. Y'all started putting to try to get it as small as possible. Careful, because sometimes it's a phrase. You need like you might need a whole real sentence. So if you accidentally wrote something vague, go back and give me something specific. If you're wrong, be confident. But I want to kind of scroll down here and show you just an example right here. So for number 3, take this weak statement. Automobiles make a lot of air pollution, which can disrupt the environment or which can harm the environment. This kind of stuff I see. What would be stronger would be automobiles produce NOx's, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. Then these components can contribute to acid rain. These components could contribute to secondary pollutants such as ozone, ground level ozone formation, which is a respiratory ailment. See what I'm saying? So your claim, automobiles produce NOx's, CO2s, and COs, period. These, blah, 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 period. Okay? So that's how I want you to make it better. All right, so still with me? Okay, so we talked a little bit about the new test. So now let's talk about the first FRQ that we had you do together. And I'm still wrapping my head around, like, we really need to practice these, y'all, like a lot. So I'm thinking about even doing some Zoom breakout sessions where we can start out as a class. And if you're available, I can like maybe put y'all in groups. I know y'all probably miss some of that collaboration and collaborative time. So I'm trying to process what's the best way for me to, get everybody and reach everybody. But your prompt for last week was of otters and orcas. And what I want to point out to you is that, hold on, sorry. You're going to be given a potential reading topic like this. And so you do need to read quickly, but you also need to make sure, like I said, that you have your book handy, your notes handy. I hope you saved all of your packets and that you took them out of the closet. I remember I told you to put them on top of your closet. I know the last unit's in my classroom right now, but you don't need that one, so we're good. Okay, of otters and orcas. So first thing you want to do is you're going to read through your prompt. And then it's saying down here for the first one, sea otters are often described as a keystone species. Describe keystone species and explain why sea otters are an example of keystone species. Okay, what kind of connections can you make right here? So first of all, you need to know what the definition is of a keystone species. Okay, and then you have to talk about why these are an actual example of a keystone species. So here is an example of there's the response they are looking for. A keystone species is any species that has an unusually strong effect on an ecosystem given its relative size and number. Period. Sea otters are a keystone species because the presence of a sea otter population dramatically affects the ecology of an area, having a major impact on other species. Okay. For this one right here, they basically give you the claim, what is a keystone species? And then they tell you how the sea otter in and of itself is also an example of that keystone species. Honestly, if it were me, I would take it a step further. I know you're short on time, but if you can explain that even more, and I'm sure it'll probably come up again later, but or you know if it will or not, you might want to read through all your questions first. But at that point, I'm not done. I would say have a major impact on many species, such as with the presence of sea otters, you have fewer sea urchins, which allows the kelp forest to thrive. Done. I mean, it only takes another second to finish that out and have that really powerful reasoning. I see my claim, I see my evidence, and then I just gave an example of a reasoning. This is Albert.io, so you know that we're gonna fortuitize this and make sure that you are getting everything that you need to get. Okay, so identify how a decline in sea otter population threatens bald eagle populations. So identify, remember, you save some time on this one. You don't have to go all out and then keep on going and keep on playing evidence reasoning on this. Just give me your straight answer. Identify how a decline will threaten bald eagle. They said sea otters will allow kelp forest habitats to thrive by ferociously eating invertebrates like sea urchins that will eat through the roots of the sea kelp and kill it. Eagles depend on many of the fish that thrive in the sea kelp environment as a food source. So that was a little wordy, but you know, identify. So they didn't get the memo at Albert.io that identify can be a little bit shorter. So you don't have to go into quite as much detail about that one. But it was more than a one-worder that we've been tending to do. So sometimes you just need to say a little bit more to spit it out. So if you don't have, basically you could have said, if you don't have sea otters, you won't kill sea urchins that eat kelp forests, which provide food and fish for bald eagles. So you could have shortened that a little bit. So C, describe a food chain that shows the flow of energy from the sun to the orcas. Identify the primary consumers, producers, secondary consumers, or tertiary. So here you basically had to show the directionality of a basic food chain. Okay, on here. This is really kind of, I won't say lower level, but it's at the same time making that connection that you understand a food chain and you were able to label what those different portions on the trophic levels are called. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, so as long as you can identify those different parts here, producer, primary consumer. Sometimes my caution is sometimes y'all forget and you say, you go to the second trophic level is secondary consumer. So just make sure you don't trip up on that. Okay, so explain how the second law of thermodynamics applies to the transformation of energy from lower trophic levels to higher trophic levels and what this means for the total biomass at each level. Okay, so second law. Okay, so here's kind of cool because you have to make connections. You have to, first of all, know and pretty much be able to define what is the second law of thermodynamics here. And then you have to apply it. Okay, so that's the whole thing about these FRQs. It's knowing concepts and then applying the concepts. So knowing that what the second law is, and then knowing that as you go up at each trophic level, you know you're going to lose energy as you move up the food and energy pyramid. Why? Because it's lost its heat. That's part of the definition of the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, what I write down for E. Some ecosystems convert energy into biomass at higher trophic levels more efficiently than others. Sea otters need to eat 25 to 30% of their own body mass in food every day and have an extraordinarily low ecological efficiency. So discuss one reason why sea otters have lower ecological efficiency than other organisms. So here, just knowing that energy is all materials have different quantities of energy with them. So knowing that and also understanding that as you move higher up the food and trophic levels, you need, I should say, you have fewer numbers and fewer biomass in that trophic level. So, and also basically knowing that things that you eat have different energy in it. So when you're about to go run a marathon or you're going to have a big meet, what are you supposed to eat the night before? Yes, you need to have carbohydrates, grains. You want to eat the lowest part of your food, of the energy pyramid. So F, ecosystems are complex and interconnected. Disrupting the balance of an ecosystem can have widespread effects. One likely impact of reduced sea otter population is an increase in global warming. Identify the effect of a reduced sea otter population that could lead to an increase in global warming and explain how this occurs. So this is one of those excellent examples of the interconnection of different concepts and bringing it all together. So even y'all got ahead of everybody. So y'all went through all the way through 9. So doesn't mean you can't talk about that in your FRQ. So other schools around the country maybe only got to to Unit 7. So I don't think you're going to be penalized if you actually, I'm not going to ask you straight up global warming, but if it was something else and you included it, I think that you'd be okay, because we've been talking about it all year and how that is a part of a lot of the reason we talk about carbon dioxide. And I think you should be able to talk about it anyway, because we did our air pollution unit. And so we've talked about how carbon dioxide, that's one of the consequences of it. So I think it'd be okay to make that connection on here. But the whole point is that, remembering you're doing your claim and your evidence and your reasoning here. So making the connection that kelp is a carbon sink, and because it's a photosynthetic material and it's a little kelp forest. And so if you don't have that, you also are decreasing photosynthesis and you're decreasing having that carbon sink. And then remember, we don't just talk about carbon dioxide done. Then we always go on. We say carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. That can, period. This increases the global temperature changes, or impacts global warming, increases global warming, to be more specific. Okay, so also on here, it kind of shows you, talks about the points on the Albert I.O., so that's kind of cool. This is where we pulled this one from. But this was their little rubric that they decided to use for how you wrote and what you wrote. So hopefully you are able to, by the way, when you have a YouTube, you can change the speed. So if you want to slow me down, you can, or if you want to speed me up, you can. You can pause and look at this. But anyway, either way, if you have any questions, let me know. I didn't mean to drown on and on. The next ones won't be this long. I just wanted to give you a quick intro to FRQs. So have a wonderful day, and I miss y'all.